introduction then. My name is Hazel Waters. I'm a senior advisor on the MBA admissions and recruitment team here at Oxford Said. And essentially this is going to be an hour-long application tips webinar. I'm going to discuss things for the first 30 minutes based on some slides. So I'll touch on the application requirements, what do you need, and the application deadlines, when should you aim to be submitting by, and then next steps and things that I can help. That will be tips and tricks on how to embellish your application and how to make sure that you are ahead of the game and competitive when you do submit an application. For the last 30 minutes, then it will swap over and it'll be a Q&A session. So feel free to use that Q&A function you just used there and ask me questions that you've got about your application tips. My main thing is if you could keep the questions quite broad, that'd be helpful. And therefore we can give answers that would reach most of the audience and will be applicable to most of the audience and helpful for everyone today. If you have really particular questions about your candidacy or concerns that you may have, do feel free to send them to the inbox later or send it to your Oxford MBA inbox. On our last slide then, there will be the email address for that. Do feel free to reach out to us. A member of our team will be happy to help and have a conversation with you about any concerns that you may have. But that will be the structure of today. I think the participant numbers have risen. Hopefully everybody is here. So thank you very much for giving up some time. If it is a case that you have to pop out and you can't stay for the full session, that's completely fine. This webinar is recorded and it will be sent out afterwards as well. In the meantime, please feel free to start using that Q&A function now, and I will answer the questions when we get to them at the end. Okay, so MBA application stage deadlines. Essentially, there's 3 stage deadlines for the September 2024 intake. So if that's the intake that you were looking for, these are the 3 deadlines that you would have had to take note of. So we have passed stage 1 and we have just finished with stage 2, and any offer holders will be let know tomorrow. I don't think we'll have anyone on the webinar today who's in that category. They've long since forgot their application. But for anybody who's looking to join them in September, we still have the stage 3 deadline on the 20th of March 2024. And for anybody who is currently in the midst of doing their application, is still trying to get the finishing touches, we're really happy to have you here today, and hopefully I can help answer and give you a bit of an inside scoop on things that you may be concerned about. For anybody who's not aiming for 2024 and it's early days, you're still shopping around for MBAs and you're potentially thinking about 2025, maybe even 2026 or further down the line, completely welcome to join as well, and hopefully I can answer some questions and you can get some insight into what the application process will be like and what you can requirements you'll need to aim for if you've got some time to build certain criteria up. The main question we do get asked is there a difference between the 3 stages if they're all for the same thing? And the answer, to be honest, is a bit of yes and no. Firstly, I would say stage 1 and stage 2 is mostly the same. In the sense that there's still roughly offers available, and there's still funding available. So stage 2 is usually our busiest stage, and that's the one that we just went through. So if you're concerned about submitting in stage 3, I would just say 3 things. Stage 3, completely fine to submit by. It can be a little bit more competitive, one, because we've given out a lot of offers already. Doesn't mean there isn't offers there. It completely means that you can still submit. I recommend submitting a very strong application, and it doesn't mean that you wouldn't get an offer based on that. The second thing that I will say is college preference. So if you're someone who's really concerned about getting a certain college and you're really aiming for a certain college in Oxford, then some of them positions may be already taken or some colleges may be full. You will still get a college place regardless of where your preference is. So don't worry too much. Your experience should relatively be the same. But if you've really got your heart set on somewhere, then I'd recommend going for stage 1 and stage 2. That also comes with accommodation, which I can touch on a little bit. And then the third thing I would say is funding. So most of the scholarships that we do are usually aligned with the University of Oxford deadlines, and they will usually be in January. So if there's a particular scholarship like Laidlaw or Wyden-Hoffman that you're looking for, then we would encourage you to apply by their deadline, which is usually around January every year anyway. There still will be funding available for the March deadline. It will just be a case that the pool of funding available is slightly less than the other 2 stages. Just to circle back to the Oxford collegiate system for a second, for anybody in the audience who has no idea what I'm talking about, it's quite unique to the UK even, but it's two universities that sort of do it. Ourselves and Cambridge also do a very similar system. So what it is that our MBA is in an academic department, which is Said Business School. And then because you will be a student of the University of Oxford within that, then you will also have a college place, and everybody who comes in the MBA will have to have a college place. So essentially, you can pick one college as your preference when you do your research and when you get to that exciting stage of looking into it. You'll be able to pick one college as your preference. Your file will be sent to that college, and then the college will either decide that there's room for you there or there's not room for you there, and then you'll get submitted back into the pool. Basically, college can be important as well because there is one option to do college accommodation, and you can also do two other options if that doesn't work out. So you can do postgraduate accommodation in the University of Oxford, and you can also do privately renting in around Oxford as well. So if you submit in stage 3, there still should be accommodation available. It will just be a case that maybe it's not your preference accommodation that you'd originally hoped for. But all in all, our main sort of advice that we give is please submit when your application is strongest. Please don't rush it. Please don't think, oh, I'll just get it across the line and hit the deadline. We really do value well put together applications that are well thought out and do make sense and are very sort of reflective of who you are. So please give as much time as you feasibly can. We appreciate that people have professional and personal lives that they sort of have to juggle around this sort of quite intensive application process as well. So when your application is strongest, that is when we'd recommend to submit. So even if you're thinking about stage 3, you're like, I just really want to be there in September 2024, but you haven't even started with the GMAT, or you haven't even looked at the application yet, do strongly consider whether or not this time makes the most sense for you, whether it will give you the best opportunity. With each stage, then so the 3 stages are for application, but with that as well, we also list when you will expect to hear interview decisions and when you expect to hear offer decisions on our website as well. So that's what that QR code is for. Essentially, it just shows you the different dates that you can expect, especially if you're someone who wants to jot it in their calendar so they can be prepared. Okay, let's go through application requirements then. So I've talked about everything that the dates for when you need to submit your application, but what is actually involved in your application? So on screen, there are 7 components. Some of these will be components that you'll already have done and you can submit, like maybe your GMAT undergrad degree. And then other components will be things that are part of the application that you will need to complete as part of your application, and you will do it as you go along. I'm going to go through each of these and give you the benchmark of what we look for. So the average of what we expect within a cohort, or the average of what we look for, you know, as a benchmark that you need to meet. If it's a case that you don't meet one of these benchmarks, please do not count yourself out. Please do not get imposter syndrome and think, oh, well, I'm not good enough for Oxford. It's not the message we want to get out there. We will look at applications holistically. And if you're in that MBA research and you've, listened to lots of other business schools as well, it's something that we quite all, I think, strongly like to promote, is that we do look at applications holistically. So if, you're sitting in the audience and you're really concerned about your undergraduate degree, because it's not what I'm about to list, but you have really impressive professional experience to date. Maybe you've got, you work for a really big global company, you've worked on some fantastic projects. We will consider all of that and we will weigh it all up. So please do not count yourself out. If you are truly concerned, like I said earlier, please do reach out to us. Let's have a conversation. Maybe there's opportunity for you to bolster a component that you didn't previously think that you could, in order to make your application a little bit more competitive. So I'll give the benchmark, but then I will also sort of give you a little bit of an embellishment, essentially giving you tips and tricks on how to make your application a little bit more competitive. You're about to enter quite a distinguished pool of applicants. Okay, so the first thing that you'll need is the undergraduate degree. And the main thing I'd like to say is that this is essential. You have to have an undergraduate degree in order to be considered for the program. So if you have a master's, if you have a PhD, if you've done a cert, that's all completely fine, but you will need to upload your bachelor transcript as well. It's the main thing that we require. If you want to also include your other academic achievements, feel free to put them up. We will only really take into consideration anything that's 9 months or longer as an official sort of transcript or mark sheets that we would need to look at. So do keep that in mind. We will take a look at all of it and keep it into consideration. What we look for then is a UK 2.1 or higher, which equates to a US GPA of around 3.5 out of 4. If you come from a different part of around the world that doesn't use those two metrics, please do not worry. Our class is 97% international, so we know most universities use different metrics. We as a team will then sort of convert your degree and we will be able to make sure that it aligns or doesn't align. GMAT or GRE, key component here is the bold or. We will accept either or, and we do not have a preference for which one you take. It's really up to you. So do feel free to sort of mess around with both platforms. You can trial both of them. You can do a mock in both of them and see which best suits your style. I think, you know, if you're more of a quantitative person, if you're more of a verbal person, which score will better give you a chance of success. We are aware that GMAT have changed to GMAT Focus, and the last application deadline was when people with the first lot of GMAT Focus submitted. So other people have already submitted with that, but I think for going forward, everybody will mostly be GMAT Focus. If you are someone who has the old GMAT, that's completely fine to submit with that score, as long as it's not expired. So you have 5 years on your GMAT. So if it's within that date and within that range, that's completely fine. Then we will consider your GMAT. For an average score, then we look for around 650 GMAT, so the old GMAT. If you're unsure as to where that equates on GMAT Focus, there is concordance tables. They're slightly different because they work with percentile, but there is sort of concordance tables online that will show you what an old GMAT score equates to the new GMAT Focus score. And unfortunately, as it's so new, we don't necessarily have a GMAT Focus average yet. But hopefully next year we will be able to gauge a little bit more on what a competitive score is there. So for the moment, what we advise is an average 650 GMAT. If you want to be competitive, we would say 690. And if you want to go into consulting, we say 700. So MBB firms, especially within the UK and Europe, will look for your GMAT score on your CV as an MBA candidate. So it's not something that will be written off. It's something that they actually look at when they recruit for positions. So just keep that in mind if consulting is a key sort of track that you want to follow. For GRE, then we look for an average of 322, which we say is about a 160 verbal and a 160 quant. So hopefully that gives you guys either a bit of reassurance or a little bit to think about. What we recommend is to give yourself maybe 6 months to think about the GMAT or GRE, maybe book a date 6 months in advance. Time can go by so quickly, especially when you've got like lots of other stuff going on and day-to-day things going on. And then we recommend 3 solid months of sort of prep, of really sort of studying, getting involved in things when you have the opportunity or the chance to do so, just to give yourself the best option available and to submit with a score that you feel is very reflective of you. Moving on to just the other side then, professional experience. So our average professional experience for this cohort is 6 years, which is slightly higher than last year's, which is 5 years, but it usually ranges between 5 and 6 years professional work experience. To give you a bit of a gauge then, the minimum work experience we look for is 2 years full-time, no internships, no part-time work. It has to be 2 years full-time. So on one end of the scale, that will be the minimum. So there'll be people who will join with just on the cusp of 2 years full-time work experience. And then the other end of the scale, there will be people that will potentially join with 10, 12, sometimes up to 15 years experience. If you are someone who's joining on the other end of the scale, who's the slightly higher end of the scale, that's completely fine. But a member of our team may reach out and ask you if you'd like to consider the executive MBA. You by no means have to take the executive MBA, but it may be that you find you'll have more of a peer group there and a peer base there and a stronger curriculum for you as someone who's been in the workforce, potentially longer than some of your counterparts on the MBA program. But again, it's completely up to you what you want to do. So that just gives you sort of a range of people. It should maybe also give you a range of average age. So our average age is usually about 28 years old, and there's no minimum or maximum on age either. If you're at the higher end of the work experience, it also may align with your age, and it may be something where we have a conversation about executive MBA, but like I said, it's completely up to you. References. So this is something then that you'll have to put into your application. And this is something that if you haven't thought about, it's a good thing to start thinking about quite early. Your references will need to submit for the application deadline. So it's really important that you pick people you can trust, who are timely and organized and haven't got 10,000 projects going on, and they will be able to spend some good time writing you a letter of recommendation and submitting it for the application deadline. When they submit, you will be notified by email. So if you don't get that email, it means they haven't submitted yet. So do reach out to them if you can. Make sure to pick somebody you can have a conversation with and be like, hey, just wondering where your reference is, or if you've got time to do it. Someone that you're able to have that relationship with can be really helpful. The references can be academic or professional. We just recommend that you pick someone who knows you, knows your work ethic, and knows your character and can speak to that. It's best not to pick the CEO if you have no relationship with the CEO. Pick somebody in your workforce if you're choosing professional, that knows you, that knows your capacity to work, that knows your ambition for projects, etc., and can speak to your skill set. It doesn't have to be a line manager or someone, you haven't told you're about to do an MBA yet, but it's something that you may have to have a conversation with later. So do be mindful of who you pick. Academic references aren't as popular, so you can do a mix if you want, or you can do 2 professional, 2 academic, whatever you choose. The only thing on academic references is it may be a few years since you've completed your undergraduate degree, and therefore you haven't got a strong relationship, or they may not have as strong of an insight into who you are in the workforce. So choose an academic reference if you've got a really good relationship with somebody from that realm, maybe a faculty member, a professor that you worked with before, and they can speak quite highly to you. Maybe you've just completed a master's or done a research project. Again, if you've got the relationship there and you know that they're going to support you, that's completely fine to use. What is involved then is I would recommend having a conversation with your references first, let them know, hey, I'm about to sign you up to be my referee. Is that okay? Then you will submit their email in your application. We look for professional email addresses, so please keep that in mind. Submit their email address. They will then get an email to a link that will basically ask them to rate you on different components. And then they'll be asked to submit a letter of recommendation based on their rating. So they will have prompts, they will have, they will have some sort of outline of feedback on what they need to give. They won't be left completely in the lurch. And then once they're submitted, like I said, you will get an email to confirm that that's been complete. A main question that we do get asked is about family businesses. People have family businesses or they're entrepreneurs and they're like, well, who do I ask about my reference? You can choose a stakeholder, a client. Maybe you've got a really good relationship with a client, a board member, if you know a board member, if you work in that environment, co-founder potentially. The only caveat is if you work in a family business, we ask that you don't choose a family member, and hopefully you've got the opportunity to ask other people, like I said, clients or stakeholders who will be able to speak to you and, like I said, speak to your character. Okay, video assessment. Essentially, you will submit all written components of your application before the application deadline. So if you're aiming for the 20th of March, I recommend submitting everything else for the 19th of March or even the 18th if you possibly can. Once you submit all written components and they're complete, you will then get a link to your KIRA, K-I-R-A, online assessment. And you will be able to open that platform and practice and trial in there before you sort of have to officially do it. It gives you I always recommend doing that. People ask me, how can I get ahead of the game? How can I make sure my application is good? I think your online assessment is a great environment to do so. So give yourself the time to practice, especially if you're not used to this odd interface of just speaking to a camera and nobody else is around. It can be a bit daunting. It can be you can be a little bit more self-conscious or nervous when doing that. So completely recommend that you practice around with the platform and even just getting used to the platform. What that involves then is you will have essentially 4 questions that you need to complete. 3 questions will be online video, so just talking to the camera. You will have 60 seconds to read the question and then 90 seconds to answer the question. So a little bit of a buffer to think about what you're going to say and then 90 seconds to answer. There is no retakes once you start, so just sort of go in there a little bit confidently. You will have 2 questions that are motivation based, typical questions about sort of Oxford or MBA and things that you should be able to answer. The third question then will be slightly a bit more randomized from your peers, and that will be more of a traditional interview style question. Something that you can pull on from your work that you've had to do before in an interview environment. It shouldn't be something too daunting, and it should be something that you can pull from quite quickly, or something that you've got an example of as well. The last component then is a really randomized part, and this is a written component then. So you'll be given a question that's very random. So it could be, describe the color yellow to someone who can only see in black and white. So there's no necessarily right or wrong answer. And then you'll be given 5 minutes to type an answer to that question. And like I said, there's no necessary right or wrong answer. So it's really about your creative, thinking, your problem solving. Can you come up with a stance? Have you got sort of an argument for it? And just sort of go for it. I wouldn't recommend overthinking it too much. That will be all of your video assessment. And then once that's complete, your application has been submitted. Your supporting statement then. So the supporting statement is the only part of the application that is essentially an essay. There is some other parts of your application that feel like an essay, but they're not necessarily traditional essays. And the supporting statement is the actual official essay. You have a max 250 words, and it's quite free form. It's basically something along the lines of sort of, why an MBA, or tell the admissions committee something more about you. So it's quite broad in how you want to approach it. Many people ask me, how do I approach it? What am I supposed to say? And there's no sort of structured thing that you need to think about. It really is reflective of you. It really shows your personality on just how you approach it itself. So the rest of your application will show your academic qualifications, your CV will be there, so we'll know your professional side. But this is the only part that shows your personality a little bit. The online assessment, we will see you, but we're not asking you questions that you may usually sort of encounter. So the supporting statement is really sort of a time to shine with your personality. People approach it in all different ways. They will say, a childhood story, or the spark that ignited them on this MBA journey. They'll maybe just sum up their work experience. They'll give like a pivotal moment in their life that just sort of made them change, or it can really be as impactful or as, comprehensive as you want it to be. But I would recommend spending a little bit of time on that component and not sort of rushing anything in. I really appreciate your patience on this slide. I know we're going through quite a few components, so let's touch on the last one, which is the English language proficiency. So there are a couple of things that you can do here. The first is if you are a national or a national of a non-majority English-speaking country as listed online, then you will have to submit a test score, either an IELTS or a TOEFL. We don't have preference for either. We don't have preference whether it's in a test center or whether it's online. It's completely up to you which one you want to submit, but we do have minimum requirements. So for the IELTS, we look for an overall 7.5 and then a 7 for each of the components. For TOEFL, we look for a minimum of 110 and above. So hopefully that gives you some sort of gauge. There's then two other options that you can do. You could potentially go for an academic waiver. So if you are someone who has completed a degree within 2 years of the start date of the MBA program, then you can go for an academic waiver. It's sort of a bit of a tricky concept to understand, and it is listed on our website, but do feel free to reach out if you've got any further questions on that point. Basically, to get the waiver for that, then you will need to upload a letter from the institution stating that you were a student there from the period that you said you were a student there. And you will need to sort of have them state that, yes, the coursework was taught in English. The third thing and the final option that you can do for this is the professional waiver. So essentially, if you work for a global company that speaks English in its day-to-day working environment, I suppose it speaks, listens, reads, and writes in English is the main 4 components that we look for, then you will be able to submit a professional waiver. What that involves is you typing up a Word document or any kind of document, giving examples of how you read, write, speak, and listen to English on a day-to-day basis in your work environment. It's also helpful to list your company at the top of that waiver as well. Again, any concerns, do feel free to reach out. I really appreciate your patience whilst we went through those questions or went through each of those components. And I've got one final slide before questions. I can see questions coming in, guys, so I really appreciate the engagement. That's what we're here for, and I will get to them in a few short minutes. Okay, next steps. What can you do next before you either start your application or you're thinking about your application? Number one is download a brochure. If you haven't already done so, I highly recommend doing it. We've got a brochure for the MBA program, but we also have a brochure for our 1+1 MBA program, which is quite a unique program that we offer in Oxford. So do take a look at that one as well. Maybe it's something you never knew about, but would consider. The reason I say download a brochure is because it really gives an insight into the school a little bit more. It gives you an insight into the curriculum, the career opportunities, things that are really important to you, especially when you're thinking about the MBA as a return on investment. It's a big year of your life to commit, and we appreciate that people may be looking for certain things when looking for MBA programs. The second, and I think honestly the most important of everything here nearly, is connect with current MBA students and alumni. The best way to reach out to them is LinkedIn. They're quite active, they're quite engaged, and they're happy to have conversations. They were once in your shoes, they were once on these webinars, they were once having conversations with our team, so they completely understand what it's like trying to whittle down programs, but also trying to understand where is best for them. I also say lots of people wonder, they're like, well, why Oxford? I think talking to our students and talking to our alumni will give you the sense check you need. Do these students give, the vibe, the community, the sort of collaborative aspects that you're looking for in an MBA program? Have they been exactly as someone you would like to sit next to? Because that's sort of, what you're looking for here. Prepare for your GMAT and GRE. So I've already spoken about that. 6 months, start thinking about it. 3 months, start preparing. It really is such a big part of the application. And it can be a bit more sort of tedious than people originally imagine, especially if people come from quantitative backgrounds. They can kind of disregard it and be like, oh, I do, quant stuff all day, I'll be fine. But it really is something you should take, a few minutes to even do a mock test or trial and really see what will be expected of you. Register for webinars. So this step one is already done. You're already here, but we do host some really good webinars. We are doing lots of stuff on virtual help desks. So feel free to join them. You can just pop on. It's live like this. You can ask questions and our team will just answer. Nothing formal about it. But we're also doing those virtual help desks with different members of our careers team. And there will be one on consulting in a few, I believe it's in a month or at the end of this month. So do feel free to register for that and attend. It will be on consulting and it'll be a member of the careers team from consulting sector who can speak to the services that they will provide or can speak to sort of things that you'll need in order to consider a degree or a career in that industry. But plenty of other opportunities as well for webinars that hopefully you will find interesting. The next thing then is attend events. We travel, we are in country. I myself am going to Indonesia and Malaysia next month for 2 fairs that are listed on our website. So feel free to register if you're in those locations and want to have a conversation. Other than that, our team are constantly traveling. So do again, check out our website and see if we're coming to a place near you in the near future. And we also do one-to-one conversations in London as well. So feel free to register for that if it's something that you want to do. Last thing, and then I will stop speaking so much, is start your application. I've said it a few times and I'll repeat it one more time. It is quite an extensive process. There is a lot to do. A lot of people say it's a very reflective process. It's something they start and they think one thing and then, they're forced to think about their post-MBA plan. They're sort of forced to think about the future and where they've come from and what the next agenda is. So it can take some time doing the easy components that you know and just need to upload documents, but it can also take some time thinking and being reflective and going, okay, well, where do I want to go in career and what do I want to get out of this? We want to know that an MBA program suits you as much as you suit the MBA program. So it's sort of a twofold thing. And I think starting the application or just registering for the application to have a look and see what's expected of the different components and sort of the timelines and organization that goes into it, I think is key and very important. But that is everything. And I literally said there was a couple of slides. So there is a couple of slides and we're bang on 30 minutes. So the structure is going perfectly on track. I am going to start answering questions now. So please bear in mind, if you still have one, please paste it or pop into the Q&A chat and I'll get to it now as well as if I have time, but I should have. Okay. Someone has said, what are some common things that applicants should avoid in their essays? It's a really good question and nobody has ever asked me this before, so I find it quite intriguing. Common things that applicants should avoid in their essays. I suppose I can only speak from a personal standpoint, but I think it's what I said. I think you should approach the essay a little bit personable if you can. Don't just list out everything your CV lists out again. Don't be like, well, I started work here and I did work there. If you can show a bit of character and if you can show a bit of personality, I think that really helps. You know, at the end of the day, we're looking for behaviors in people that will suit our MBA program and sort of suit the Oxford ecosystem. So it's easier for us to distinguish that between, you know, a personable essay versus a very factual essay. But there is no common errors that people sort of necessarily make. Everybody comes at it from an approach that best suits them. But really interesting question. Thank you for making me think on that one. So the next question is really good because it's now sort of brought me nicely onto what I've just finished up on. So someone has asked, how can applicants convey their potential contributions to the Oxford MBA community beyond academic and professional achievements? Are there specific qualities the committee values in this regard? Yes. There are some qualities or behaviors like I just touched on that we look for. So we're looking for leadership potential. We always say, you know, we are trying our very best to educate the minds of, you know, world leaders to solve world challenges. And lots of our electives and curriculum are very reflective of that. So do you have leadership either in your career or do you just show leadership throughout your application and through your interview and through conversations is important. 2, intellectual curiosity. Are you someone who's always willing to learn? Are you someone who's open to conversation? Are you someone who's interested in a global mindset or having conversations with a very diverse group of people? And just genuinely learning, maybe you know, being open-minded to other concepts and ideas, I think is key as well. And then the third thing, and it's very important for us, is EQ. Is, you know, does the applicant we're speaking to have a level of self-awareness, a level of teamwork? Are they someone who is just going to be very collaborative and helpful and kind? I think is a good one, but having that level of emotional intelligence is really important, especially considering, you know, the application requirements require GMAT and they require academic results, but, you know, behind all of that, do you have a good level of EQ that we can look for and we can be sure that when you're on the program that, you know, you're going to do well and thrive. But thank you, it was also a great question. Someone has said, how should re-applicants approach the essay reflecting on their previous application? What aspects should they focus on to demonstrate growth and a strengthened candidacy? Really good question, and thank you very much for any re-applicant who's going to spend the time and redo an application. If you did it once, it's a very extensive process. So doing it twice, we really appreciate the hard work and dedication that takes. And obviously you've really got a keen interest in Oxford. What you can do is show awareness of potentially, you know, where do you think in the last application that you didn't get in on, or, you know, did you rush your post MBA plan? Was your essay not really, you know, reflective? Did you not get your online career assessment done the way you wanted to? And just try redo it again. And I think you can then demonstrate maybe growth if you've taken up a new hobby, if you've done a new thing in work, if you've got like asked for more responsibility or got progression and you're now at, you know, you're now at a more competitive level. There's a couple of things, but I think the main thing is growth and self-awareness and sort of raising your hand and going, okay, in my last application, potentially, you know, I hadn't really thought about my post-MBA plan. I hadn't really researched how feasible it was for me to pivot from one to the other, etc. So there's lots of things you can look at. But yeah, I think coming from it from a very sort of self-aware, reflective point of view is a good thing to do. Hopefully that answers your question. Is there a recommended word length for the MBA goals essays? How can applicants ensure they provide sufficient detail without the specified limit? Some people struggle with this. What I will say is we are looking for concise answers. We are looking for, you know, have you summed up exactly what you need to do? It doesn't have to be overly elaborative, but you have to make sure that you've conveyed, yes, I'm well researched. Yes, I understand what's needed from me. So what I'd recommend is maybe write it out the first time in you know, Word doc or somewhere else, and then come back and be a bit ruthless and make sure that you can get yourself in some sort of concise answer. And then I think you need to objectively read it back to yourself and go, right, okay, this is all the stuff I know. I've really put a lot of work in, so I really want to say all these things. But if I was on an admissions team and I read this answer back, would I find that it rambles? Would I find that they could have cut this point out? Do I find that it gets to the point? So I think being your own critic here can be very beneficial. If you're brave enough, ask a family member if they can be a little bit critical, and then, you know, take it with a pinch of salt and come back to it. But I think being concise but not losing content is important. I think the best thing advice I can give is really just read it back to yourself and see what you think. If you really do think something is important, that's completely fine as well. Make sure to include it. Just be thorough in your research and just know that, you know, just convey that, yeah, I've definitely researched this and I know the answers. Another anonymous attendee, how can re-applicants, sorry, I'm just gonna make sure I haven't done this question. Okay, so reapplicants effectively convey their continued commitment to and enthusiasm for the Oxford MBA program. Are there specific examples or actions that tend to resonate well? So I think the fact that you've done another application shows, like I just said, that was what I complimented you on earlier. If it's the same person or a different reapplicant, and the fact that you have done it is helpful, showing that you've reached out to current students, reached out to alumni. I think the slide on next steps is probably your best bet. Things that I've listed there, have you done all those things? Is important. You don't have to overly sell how important Oxford is to you, but you know, I think the best thing is reach out to current students, attend events like this, and then you'll have more to say when the time comes that you need to say it. And I think it will be a bit more of a comprehensive answer. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question, and best of luck with your reapplicant essay or reapplicant application. Okay, I think I've answered the next question, so I will skip that one. That's one I've answered. Sorry, guys, just gonna find a new one. Someone has said, could you provide guidance on what makes a strong recommendation letter? The answer is no. You can't control your recommendation letter for this. You know, this is I think the only thing to sort of have guidance in a strong recommendation letter is to pick somebody you know is someone who's going to be able to give a very strong recommendation letter. If you know somebody is only good at writing a paragraph and isn't very sort of thoughtful or reflective in their words, maybe don't pick them. Pick somebody you know could give a very good comprehensive answer. But at the end of the day, I think how the recommendation letter is written is not reflective of the applicant, it's reflective of the recommender, which is completely fine. And we appreciate that people who are doing this are often people in positions of power or who have very hectic schedules. So it's completely fine the format that they choose. They will be given guidance, so don't worry about that. Just hopefully you've given them a great impression of who you are and you know that they can speak highly of you, I think and then sort of forget about it. You've tried everything that you could do there. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of peace of mind. How does the information gathered from the Kira video assessment complement other components of the application? So it complements the other components of the application because it's the only part of the application where we get to see you. It's the only part of the application where we get to put a face to all these fantastic achievements and hard work and dedication you put into your application. So I think that's how it complements it. It also shows us, you know, how can you think on your feet? How are you a problem solver? Are you really motivated by the program? The reapplicant you asked about that's a really good time to sort of talk about your motivations for Oxford. So there's lots of it's a really big asset in the application, but like I said, we look at everything holistically. We look at all components equally. So if you have a really terrible Kira because you know, maybe technical difficulties or you just weren't used to it, but yet the rest of your application strong, it's completely fine. We will think about all aspects of your application as well. So I think that it just sort of tests for different things than the rest of the application would do so. In the Kira assessment, if faced with questions or prompts that applicants find unfamiliar, how should they approach responding to showcase their abilities? Okay, so this is what I think you should do is that you should do some prep or practice with the platform because they'll give very similar questions that you will be asked, and you can sort of trial answers in your head for these sort of questions. They shouldn't be anything too outlandish that you've not ever heard before. So I think you can have peace of mind in knowing that it's not going to be something that you won't have an answer to. in all my time, I've never seen anybody really stunned by a question. It should be something that you can approach. It will be very similar to sort of any old job interview as well. So if you've done job interviews before, I think that would be the mentality you could have going into it if you're not too used to using the platform. But yeah, I'd recommend practicing. I think I've answered this as well. Sorry, guys. Someone has said when the recruitment team is reading through and reviewing references, what exactly are they looking to see? Is there a particular message that needs to be communicated by these referees? No. They'll be given guidance. They'll be asked to rate you on certain components that we won't disclose. It'll be up to the referee to look at them. And then because we've already asked them for components and to elaborate on them, that's what we're looking for. We're looking, okay, did they give more information on what we've asked them to rate? And now we can sort of gauge why they gave the scoring they did. But they'd be the main things we're looking for there. How can you stand out / compensate if you do not have a quantitative educational or career background and your test score may reflect this? Okay, very good question. Not everybody comes from a quantitative background. Educationally, most of our people who apply end up having degrees from engineering backgrounds, so not very business centric or financial background degrees. They still may be good at quant, but it means that you're not alone if you come from a different or non-traditional background. It will be something that we will consider. It just depends. If you are someone that wants to go into a very quant career post MBA and you don't have any previous quant experience in your professional experience, then we may have a conversation with you and we may go, okay, just have a conversation with you and see if you will struggle on the program. I think outside of that, we will be doing a pre-program next year. So it will be around August time, and essentially you will be able to access online resources that you could tap into when you want to, and you'll be able to look at videos and resources, and these should basically help you get to a certain level that before you come to the MBA program yourself, you will be able to kickstart, hit the ground running because you've done this pre-program stuff, and it will potentially get you to some level of quant. And if you're finding you're struggling then maybe it's time to sort of do additional things. Some people find that they'll do like an MBA math program. I'm not too sure on that one, do look it up, but they'll do like some sort of math course or something very quantitative that they to try and get that sort of side working. I won't lie, some parts of the curriculum are very quant based. It's just sort of the nature of the program. So number one, don't worry too much. You will have the opportunity to try to leverage this, and if there's a real concern, we will reach out. Number two, do think about your career options and what you want to do, and do they make sense? If it's within the quant world, does that make sense for you? Someone has said, how is the Oxford MBA different from other MBA programs in the UK? So it's a really good question. I think we're different in numerous ways. We're different because of our curriculum. I mean, I think it's fair to say that most MBA programs in the UK are very similar in how they approach their curriculum. But for us anyway, you will do 9 core modules that essentially give you that business acumen that you may be looking for. And then you will be able to pick your electives sort of in the second term. So for anybody, you'll be able to pick your electives in the second term. So what we usually say is our MBA is an MBA that you can be quite personalized with. You can really pick a pathway or build a pathway for yourself on where you want to go. And then we also have the long-term vacation, which you can do an internship, strategic consulting project. You can also do more electives if you wish to do so. There are some different electives that you may not get anywhere else in the world. And then we've got different projects like Go-To, which is very Oxford-centric, and we have the Entrepreneurship Project, which is Oxford-centric. We have the SCOL Centre, we have Creative Destruction Lab, with Impact Lab. We've got tons of co-curriculars that other business schools don't do. We're the only school in Europe that has CDL. So from a curriculum standpoint, I think that's sort of the main thing I will say is that it's very personalized, and you can approach the course how you want to do it and plan it out as best you can. I think the other thing is the fact that we're part of the University of Oxford. It's very unique. You've got tons of resources and opportunities outside of the business school to not only network, but to engage in different social activities and also to engage in different conversations that are broader than maybe even, you know, you would do in the MBA school as well, or inside your business school. So there, I think those would be the two main things. My third thing then, and this is my own personal thing, so excuse me if it's not quite correct, but I think the Oxford MBA program has this culture of being very collaborative, very inclusive. It just has a family feel amongst every MBA student cohort that I've seen, which is really lovely and wonderful. And it's not something that we advertise or sell in the brochure, but it just seems to be the case that every year people come to the program, and I think their real return on investment is the friends that they make. And I know that sounds cheesy, but the network that they build, the friends that they make, the weddings they get to attend globally around the world because they've made these connections with some people. And I think they help change you and mold you as just as much as the rest of the curriculum opportunities. But I think they'd be the three main things. And like I said, if you really aren't sure and you're shopping around, have a look or have a reach out to current students and alumni and see if you connect. See if what I'm saying is true and it's not just me giving you a sales pitch. Because I think that is a selling point people often undersell here, especially considering MBA programs are sort of, people think of them as being very cutthroat and you know, business and all high stakes and risk. But there is, I don't think the Oxford program is the same. Thank you, that was a good question. Guys, I have two more questions that I'm going to answer. And we've already answered 42. And a colleague of mine is in the background and typing answers as well. So please feel free to have a look at those if you are still waiting for your answer to be read, but you didn't see that the answer has been typed too. Is there a word limit for the short answer essay questions in the post MBA plan section in the online application? The answer is no, there's no word limit. It's up to you. It's what I said earlier. So just be concise and be thoughtful with your answers and be purposeful with your answers. Someone has said, is the 320 jury the competitive score or the average score? It is the average score. Last question. Are there word limits on the short answer questions that are not the official essay? No, there's no word limit. So it's up to you what you want to write. And like I said, again, be concise in your answers. Guys, I think that's all of the questions. I really appreciate. Oh, someone has said, when is the latest employment report coming out? So the latest one we have is on the website and you can view that now. The next one is usually sort of a year after. So I'd expect sometime in the summer you would see last year's employment report come true. If there's any other questions, feel free to answer now. You mentioned about diversity. Which diversity categories you look for in candidates? Diversity, I suppose, is quite a broad concept. There's certain things that we do look for. We would look for, I think the main thing I will touch on is we try to get a global cohort. So we will recruit from across the globe. Each of our team members have different parts of the world that we look after and we try our best to recruit from there. So I think in that sense, we try very hard to recruit globally in diverse ways. The other thing is sectors. We don't just have finance or consulting people. We have people from tech, which is actually nearly sort of outpacing finance and consulting these days. With people from the healthcare sector, military backgrounds. Sometimes we have people from the sports industry and you know, other industries as well. So I think we're diverse in that sense. And I think we're also diverse in gender parity. So we have 51% females on the MBA cohort this year, which is a great achievement for us. And I think we're the first in Europe out of European business schools to reach that achievement. So there's a few ways that we touch on diversity, but I think there's so many layers to it that that'd be the easiest one to give a bit of a broad context to. Could you elaborate on the internship opportunities during the program? As it is a year program, is the internship in line with recruitment cycles for consulting firms and banks? Okay, so there's an internship opportunity in the summer term, so it's called long vacation term, and basically it will be up to the student to obtain the internship themselves. However, when you come to the program, there's a period of that's called launch, and essentially our careers team our careers team look after different sectors. So there will be someone from consulting, there will be someone from finance, there will be someone from tech, etc. And they will let you know sort of different dates and deadlines that you'll have to keep into consideration. Consulting is quite strict and they've got very stringent deadlines, but you'll be made completely aware of it. You'll see a frenzy around the school at a certain time of the year where people are really trying to do sort of case prep or mock interviews to try get those consulting internships. And banks and finance are the same. They usually have quite strict deadlines, and our finance careers team will let you know when to keep an eye out for that. Outside of that, it's up to you to get an internship. So you can either work on that before you come, you can work on that as soon as you get here, or you can work on that as and when. Some people sort of start considering that around January time, once sort of, you know, the dust is settled around getting here and getting involved. So it really depends on you as a person on when you're going to start looking into that. But don't worry, it won't be something that will be forgotten about. It will be something that you'll be pushed to confirm and get to. Okay. Any other questions? Does the program prepare you for management in the nonprofit sectors? Really good question. There is lots of leadership opportunities. There's leadership programs that you can do. So we had a student panel last week and a few of them spoke on the leadership program. The workshops that they've done, they each got a coach or a mentor to have weekly conversations about leadership development, etc. So there's opportunities for leadership broadly. And if it's that you want to be, you know, tailored within the nonprofit sector, you could speak about that. But we also have the SCAL Centre, which looks after everything social impact. So they look after our go-to elective, which is Global Opportunities and Threats Oxford. That's where you'll work on a live impact case. And it will be sort of with a company, and you'll have the opportunity to grow and develop in that you're trying to solve a world problem with a team of other MBA students. So I think that's really good for your development and you know, building soft skills. So it's not necessarily an exact program for management in nonprofit sectors, but there's definitely opportunity for leadership. There's definitely opportunity to learn more about nonprofit sectors and work in that environment. I recommend the Impact Lab as well for a lunch bag talks that they do with different industry people, or they'll bring in guest speakers to have conversations, and then you can also network with other people in the space. And then there is just electives and core courses on management as well that you could dive into. But thank you, Jess, for your question. Does every student get allotted a career coach in accordance with their field of interest? So no, it would be up to you. You'll basically be given access to the careers team 10 weeks before you come, and you'll be able to sort of dip in and out their calendar from the different sectors. We recommend picking a career coach that sort of goes with your sector, but you don't have to. And then you can sort of create this relationship or build this sort of conversation base with one of the career coaches in your field of interest. But it's not that you're exactly assigned one. It would be up to you to sort of choose one, I think. Are there exemptions for individual with leadership awards from the UK government? No, there'd be no necessary exemptions. My colleague is answering the other question. Anyone else? Okay, guys, there's no more questions. I really appreciate everybody's attention today and for giving up your time on this evening, morning, wherever you are coming in from. So thank you very much. And if you've got further questions, there's our inbox. Feel free to reach out. Do feel free to join our other sort of, you know, join our other webinars, join our events, come meet us in person. We're traveling around the world, so do feel free to come say hello. And thank you very much, Corey, for joining, and thank you for your lovely message. Thank you, Noel. And thank you very much to my colleague Stephanie, who's been in the background assisting me today. I couldn't have done it without her. Thank you, everyone.